Okay, I'm talking to Trey Smith. Trey, welcome to Radio Eden. It's a pleasure to have you here on Radio Eden. Hi, Trey.
Oh, it's fantastic to talk to you.
Okay, Trey, I have to say I know you from a little bit watching your YouTube channel. Can you quickly sort of tell our listeners what your YouTube channel is all about and the how to get there to your channel?
I run something in the U.S. called the God in a Nutshell Project. Of course, it's available, wherever you're at, where you're listening at right now. But it covers varieties of topics, everything from corruption in the church to the Book of Enoch to ancient texts and practices, Luciferianism, and even right down to some of the current myths in science. But the way that I got started doing the God in a Nutshell channel is I committed a safe robbery on a television pastor, very prominent television pastor here in the West, named Mike Murdoch, and this man is a heavy fundraiser for TBN and Benny Hinn and some of these other folks, and I had grown up with his son. And got involved in events where I ultimately ended up smashing a Cadillac through his gate, and spent a lot of years actually on the run. A TV pastor for my own past. But that's a touch about me and how this began.
I mean, I've read the book, and it kind of intrigued me a little bit. I have to say it's a fantastic read, and it's really well written, and it's possible to download it as an ebook from your site. That's right?
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. Yeah, it is. It's the entire thing is available as a book, so people can find out all of the madness that went down behind that. Yes, it is.
Yeah, how much is it? It's a couple of dollars you want for it, just for the download. I'm not sure how much it was. Was it about $10 or something?
Yeah, it's about $10. I don't know what that would come up to in various different countries. It's about $10 US, so whatever that comes out.
Again, as I have to say, it's a really good book. It's really interesting to read, and it gives you quite an insight into the lives of some of these people. I mentioned earlier to you before this interview that one of the things which really bugs me is like here in England we've got 15 Christian channels, and on most of the channels you get these people who tell you that you need to be rich to be pleasing to God, and if you haven't got money or you are ill, there's something wrong with you, and so you need to give them lots of money so that God will give you a lot of money in return. Can you comment on that?
Well, the prosperity gospel has become, I think it's phrased best by saying that the best hustlers tend to go to the top. At bare minimum, it's a bad model for what has become prevalent in Christian TV. I think that it hurts the church, and I think that it hurts the impression of what God really has for us. First of all, we start off, man. It's my understanding that we start off prosperous with life itself.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that God doesn't love you because you have a struggle in your life, or because your bank account isn't as full as the guy next to you is horribly twisted idea. Some of the most wicked people on earth are the wealthiest people on earth.
True, very true.
But I don't think that it starts off wrong. And let me also state this, that I don't think that somebody that is prosperous, I think you are intended to be prosperous within God. I think that you can be, but I think that this is I think that you work for that. Just like anything in this life, that it goes hand in hand with integrity. I mean, when they're saying seed faith is actually true, but they mean it in a different way than I perceive it. Their perception of it is that God is a lotto machine, that you're going to give your money to someone on TV, which, by the way, every dollar that you're giving to somebody who's got a P.O. box is taking money away from the local pastor who is nearby and is doing things in your community. So that's one problem with it, that you've got folks that are spending enormous amounts of money on jet planes and limos and someone like that. In his case, his hotel stays are $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a night, and he cruises around with an entourage, all which is paid for by people that really don't have that extra money that's being squeezed out of them, whilst the people down the road who are feeding people, the people who would give the shirt off their back, the local pastor that's trying to make his bills meet, see, he's starving and barely scraping by, while other men are living literally like kings. And I think some people don't really recognize what the incomes are there. Like in Benny Hinn's case, this is somewhere between $100 and $200 million a year. All of it tax-free, by the way.
Which is crazy.
So, well, it's I mean, these are insane amounts of dollars. And when you begin to put it in the perspective of, what could that money be done for the community, or what could that money be done in the hands of varieties of local pastors, and it begins to paint a picture of why Christianity gets kicked around so much. Because money that could be spent on something uplifting is going to, the most premier of jet planes, the most premier of everything, for a handful of people at the expense of the communities at large. So that would be one problem with it. Now, the flip side of this is that, in my opinion, and I've had to go before the Lord, even about things about that book that I wrote. When I put together that book that you read, the Thieves book, I had just come out of a world that was very extreme. I had just come out of jail, in fact, at the time that I wrote that I put it together. I was in jail when I wrote most of it. How
much time did you spend in jail?
Well, I was almost 6 months. So it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't that I was there for ages, and I praise God for that, because I wasn't punished like I probably should have been. But I also wrote that book from a perspective of harboring a lot of anger that I had for years, that I sort of associated with these folks. And if there was anything that I would undo, it would be it would certainly be that, because I think we're all responsible for our actions. I did not think that it was Mike Murdoch's fault that I drove a Cadillac, no matter what he did or how I perceived it. My actions were my own.
Yeah.
And I think that has to do with growing up some too, that we begin to not be a child anymore that responds like that.
I mean, when it all happened, you were fairly young. How old were you when you when you went through the whole rigmarole of seeing how Mike Murdoch was behaving and how he was squandering money and the lifestyle he had, and when he stole his safe?
Well, that all happened when I was about 20 years old, and I had been at a very large, maybe the largest Christian school here in the U.S., or actual seminary school. I was at Christ for the Nations, and I would interact with Mike Murdoch real regularly, because I had grown up with his son, and I'll be straight about this too, is that I always perceived Mike Murdoch from the bad, and that's sort of also what you're seeing when you read these. When we were growing up, Jason, Mike Murdoch's son, lived at our home for a lot of his childhood. His mother had been divorced from Mike Murdoch. She got a very short end of the stick from the divorce. And so she struggled monthly. And so, Jason literally lived at our home. He was like a brother to me growing up. And there were times that he would go through Christmases, and he didn't have any. My family would have to get presents for Jason. He has a multi-million-dollar father, and doesn't even get a Christmas present. And so,
okay, that's pretty tough.
Well, you know, I perceived Mike Murdoch as a jerk growing up. This is the guy that won't do anything. Jason really didn't have a father. And so when we ended up at Christ for the Nations, you know, I mean, I never expressed those emotions to him. You know, I you know, a lot of people don't. I just kept it boiled inside. But I did already, walking into situations where I was dealing with him on a day-to-day basis. There was a lot of anger there already that only grew worse over time in interacting more closely with him. So, and this culminated in, you know, a screw you, man kind of attitude, and just really literally smashing a Cadillac through his gate and, you know, taking his safe. And there wasn't, there was certainly no remorse in my heart at the time for doing that. And it changed, you know, that moment, you know, sort of changed my whole life. And I blamed him for a lot of years for that. And I don't anymore. I forgive him, and I hope he forgives me for any anger that I had. In fact, I pray for Mike Murdoch many, many times, and Benny Hinn. I hope to see both of these knuckleheads in heaven, because we all three will have made it to somewhere we did not deserve to be.
Yeah.
And I pray that with all absolute sincerity. And I mean neither of those men any harm by this book or by any videos that I've made. But these are real problems. And I do get real emails from real people who have lost, in Benny Hinn's case, have lost loved ones. Because here is this guy that is pushing the people so hard. And these are people, mind you, they're sick. That's why they've come to Benny Hinn, most of them. They have, you know, things in their bodies that many of them are terminal, man. They are headed, they are snowballing towards death, and they are looking for all of the doctors that say, you're not going to make it. And here's Benny Hinn who's saying, I've got the power to heal. God's given me the power to heal, but it's going to cost you something. And then they're going to get pushed through phone calls. They're going to get told that they didn't have enough faith. And many of these people, particularly when you're facing death, what is it you wouldn't give? You're at the end of it, what are you going to hold on to for that shred of hope? And if you're being told that what's standing between you and your healing is that you don't have faith because you're trying to hold on to your finances, which is what they will tell you through phone calls, they will track you on, you know, just like a salesperson would track a prospective client. That's why they're going to ask you questions like, you know, what is the diagnosis? Really, how long have you got left? They're databasing that stuff, and that's why they're calling you to make sure. And they're not calling to make sure you're okay. In my opinion, let me state that they're not calling to make sure you're okay. They're calling to push you out of more funds, and that is how those jet planes are paid. Those jet planes, those mansions, these things are all paid for. All of these pleasures are paid for on other people's pain. And that part of it is wrong. That's called greed. And it is greed to a gross degree. And, yeah, it has a damaging impact. How can it not?
I mean, one of the things which really gets to me is you get a message which is not quite in the Bible. The Bible, you've got the story of Paul where Paul says that they went naked, they went hungry, they were suffering, they were persecuted. Jesus said, if they persecuted me, they will persecute you. You've got the story of Job where he is in dire straits because of the thing which is happening in heaven, you know, that the devil is challenging God about Job. And I think what these guys do, and this kind of bothers me quite a bit, is that sometimes the focus should really be, look, this is not your home is in heaven. You should be working towards heaven, you should focus on heaven. You shouldn't try to make yourself a nice life here on earth with nice toys, lots of money, lots of prosperity, but you should rather look for prosperity in your heart, in your relationship with God, and build a home in heaven. And I think something is going wrong there, and it's like this idea, abundance on earth. What for? If you've got enough to eat, enough to drink, if you've got clothing, we can go to work, and God has met our needs. That should be enough. That's my thinking.
Well, yeah. Well, I would. Yes, I would agree with you. These guys. First of all, let me state this. It's not, in studying history stuff like I've done in putting together videos, first of all, it's nothing new what they're doing. I mean, they think that they're little, brilliant geniuses. They come up with this stuff. But the truth is that people becoming rich by leeching off of the poor is not a new idea. It's just a new face to an old game. But and this tends to exemplify itself the most heavily in leadership. It's not. It's very rare in history to find leaders that weren't corrupt, and that's why the burden is extra high on guys that take these type of positions. And I realize that it's extra hard. At bare minimum, these men have failed to a gross degree. Because going around the world and spreading the message that God is going to bless you if you give and curse you if you don't, I'm not finding that in the scriptures. This is the same thing, though, mind you, that the Catholic Church did.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's medieval times still. Till even today. Yeah. Give to us, and God will bless you. And
they're paying for penance in Catholicism. And Catholicism is another. I'm about to put another video out that's on the new Pope. I've been working on that for the last couple of weeks, but that one's not out yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple of things about your book. There was one thing which kind of moved me a little bit, and there was a story about a woman, and she had just sold her house. Her husband had died, and she was living in a big house. She sold it, and she kind of fell in love with Mike Murdoch. She then got all the proceeds of her house. She, gave it as a dowry to Murdoch and says, "Look, if you marry me, I'll give you this money." Murdoch took the money, regardless of this condition she attached to it, obviously didn't marry her, and she was homeless. She lived in a tent outside Murdoch's home, and she just wanted to talk to the guy. And when I read this in your book, I was quite touched, and I wondered what was happening to this woman. I felt really, really sorry for her. Can you tell me a bit more about her?
Oh, I've actually talked to that lady since the book came out. And by the way, that's not an isolated case. Particularly in Mike Murdoch's case, you will find a multitude of women that have wanted to. He's a guy on TV. He's unusual, sort of, in the flock of TV pastors because he's been single and he makes that no secret. Mm-hmm. And I think he purposely sort of does that. So he has a lot of women, that will, want to get close to him. He's a wealthy guy, and I guess they probably perceive he's not bad looking. I don't want to make a judgment on that, but I mean, whatever the case, but they'll do that. And so, in this lady's case, what she had done was, I guess she'd been watching his shows on television, and she really felt like that, she was going to follow the instructions. Mike is on television, and he's saying, if you really, God won't open his hand if you don't open yours. So she did that. She opened her hand and she gave all that she had. And I don't mean to laugh at that at all in any sense, by the way, because that lady has gone through a lot of tough years because of that choice. And that was a stupid choice, by the way. That was not the Lord that spoke to her. That was, she got in an emotional climax and she did something that she should not have done in any way, shape, or form. She found herself down there in Dallas, Texas, and she gave the monies that she had, all of them, as I understand it, to Mike Murdoch. And her hope was that by doing this, he would recognize her and perhaps be interested to marry her. And she just, that's, you know, she was in a traumatic state of her life. She lost her husband, I don't know how long before, and these other kind of things. And anyhow, she did this for whatever idiotic reason she did it. What this would cost her is that, yes, people were literally donating her a canopy so that she could be out of the weather. She was very weathered looking at the time that Jason and I went by and we saw her, because she had been out there for, you know, some period of time. I don't know how long, but certainly wasn't days. I mean, this was longer than weeks.
And so
outside.
She wasn't even in a tent. She just had a canopy. That's all.
Well, no, she did almost look like a little campsite. I mean, she was on basically this vacant ground, which is, you know, Mike Murdoch lives probably about 50 miles outside of Dallas, outside the heart of Dallas. So you're kind of in this area that's sort of, you know, rural area. And so, you know, she was just right down the road from the ministry. Very noticeable. I mean, she's out there and she's got lanterns and, you know, igloos and stuff. And she was basically camped there. She had nowhere else to go.
And she had no income either. All her income was gone because she has given whatever she had to him.
No, people felt bad for her and they were giving her things. And this was... So they had actually a meeting about this on a Thursday night. What are we going to do about this lady? And, you know, and it was brought to Mike's attention. You know, I mean, this looks bad, man. You got a lady that gave everything she has, and people are out there donating her things. So that was the perspective they came at it from, was that this looks bad, you know? And it did look bad. And she's telling people, hey, I gave Mike my money, and now I've got nothing. That doesn't look good.
So was there a sense of compassion? Was there a sense of compassion within the group of people who met at the committee meeting for this lady?
I think there was probably in his staff. You know, in his staff there probably was, because the reality just sets in. That you got, you know, I mean, you're sitting in a beautiful building, and here's this lady, and she's broke. And the truth is, if you gave her every red cent of her money back, it's not going to make a dent in what Mike Murdoch. But and that was actually suggested to Mike Murdoch. Let's just give her her money back and tell her, you know, let's just give her the money back and say we can't accept this. And this Mike was angry at that suggestion. I mean, this was, he bowed at his chest on that one, because, you know, that's not the way, you know, apparently you guys in this room don't understand the way this works. We don't give money back. That's not, once the money hits those ushers' hands, that's my money. I mean, he beat his chest about it, which, in a sense, is symbolic of his mindset, or at least the way that it was at that time. That you know, this is about the money, and it doesn't, you know, that's my money. And he, in his own mind, the act of sort of manipulating somebody out of their money, in his mind, he earned that. That's his, man. How dare you even suggest that we hand that money back? And I don't know what they did in the end, but she did ultimately, you know, she did disappear from there. So I don't know if they helped her get a bus ticket to get back to her family or something like that. But from her account, they didn't give the money back. Um, so, you know, and again, this is just one. You know, that's an extreme case. But the truth is that people all over the place have that same story. They just don't end up in a tent.
Yeah.
You know, on the side of the road. They may end up, you know, they may end up in financial difficulties for years. There's one lady that I talk to on a nightly basis, and well, maybe not nightly, but I've become real close friends with one gal that was just absolutely financially devastated by Mike Murdoch. And I just love her to death. I thought, you know, she prays with me. Just really neat lady. But she had really felt, you know, you watch these things, and these guys have practiced this stuff so much that it beats it into your head that the Lord really does want you to step out in faith and hand over as much as you can. It'll start with the $58. You got to understand that part of it. When you see somebody like Mike Murdoch saying, you know, he wants you to plant a seed for $58, well, you're going to fill out what your name is, your address, your phone number, and all that kind of stuff, right? That $58 that you just planted, you just proved that you're a payer. You just proved that you are a payer. From that point forward, you're going to get hit with requests for money all the time, monthly. Those requests will go up in amount. He's going to hit you up for $1,000. And if you pay the $1,000, you're going to get hit up at some point later for $5,000.
Okay. Yeah.
The systems for this are just like, as I said, it's just like a sales. You know, it's just like if you had a call center, because that's what they are. They have call centers. And the call center is tracking customers, just like it would if you were interested in buying a car.
So it's just like the same system as a customer relation management system, a CRM system, where which you use for business, you know, just to identify who your customers are, your clients are, and then trying to make a sale, you know, for the appropriate client and to target your marketing.
Now, if the money is significant portions of it, now here's the reality of that. You know, if these guys, you know, I mean, if they were asking you for $58 a month, let's say, in Mike's case, and that money was going to feed children, or it was going to, you know, do something, pick anything, you know, something beneficial for a community, and that was the stated cause. And he was really spending the money or most of it on doing that. See, that would be a whole different thing.
But he doesn't.
Right. Now, if you're talking about like in Mike Murdoch's case or Benny Hinn's case, and these are both real extreme cases, in my opinion, because you've got 1 to 3% of the income of those ministries. This is my understanding of the numbers, by the way. But 1 to 3% of that incoming money is going to anything other than ministry overhead and the lifestyles of the ministers.
Okay. So it's
I mean, think
pretty
about
bad.
that. 1 to 3% of hundreds of millions of dollars in Benny's case. In Mike's case, this is like $25 million a year. That's a lot of money, man.
Trey, before I conclude, we've been on for about half an hour. Can you just come back on this woman in the tent? Yeah, the lady who has given all her money to Mike and was living in a tent outside his home. You said that after you written the book, you spoke to her one more time and you could track down a little bit about what she did and how she is and how she is doing. Is she okay now?
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, she was okay as she can be. I mean, you know, she's hurt by it, and the way that I talk to these kind of people is that I just get an email from them saying, hey, that's me, or you know, this is my experience from Mike Murdoch, and I've had a lot of those at this point. Very few of them are favorable. But I would like to point out that point, because some of them are favorable. And so I don't know really where the line is, but I think these guys have crossed it. For example, there are people who will say, I gave Mike Murdoch $58, or I gave Benny Hinn $1,000, and I really feel like he touched my life. And to me, that's fair. It's the abusive ones that bother me, and they're wealth of them. They constitute the bulk of it. Very rarely do I get an email about either one of those guys that's positive. Usually, in Mike Murdoch's case, it'll typically be, just a financial devastation thing. In Benny Hinn's case, these can really jerk to tears because you're dealing with people's health. And, so a lot of those are going to start with, I had a family member that died, and I don't have an inheritance now because of Benny Hinn, because my mother or my grandmother, gave everything she had, including the house. In fact, I've had several emails about that, in fact, that, they went to go find out about the house. Mm-hmm. And Benny Hinn Ministries, according to these folks, would actually fight them over the house because the house would get written up to Benny Hinn.
Oh dear! And, I mean, that's really bad. That's really difficult. I mean, especially if families. I mean, this is a big thing. If you're a young family, and you're just making it out in life, and your grandparents die, and there's something to just make your life as a young family a little bit easier, so you don't have to pay a mortgage or something, and you can, face life with less stress. And it's hard when suddenly all this goes to some ministry, and not where it belongs to the family.
I mean, out of the emails that I've got about, I mean, how many people has this happened to in reality? I would bet you that it would just drive you to sheer tears if you were to actually look at the volumes of folks that this happened to, because even just the emails that I've got, or that the Trinity Foundation has got on on folks that they keep track of who have been devastated by this stuff. I mean, how many people have to get screwed over to crack a $200 million a year nutshell?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, think about how large that number is. $200 million a year.
Mm-hmm. It's big. It's very big.
Well, it's a lot of squeeze on a lot of folks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I can see that. I can see the pain. I can see the pain people have and what people are going through, especially when this inheritance thing goes, and also when people are giving beyond their means, to put themselves into jeopardy and their families into jeopardy by giving too much away without considering the people around them.
Here's the good news, man.
Yeah.
The good news is that this is what I believe, that God is incredibly real, and He's not blind to these. He's not blind to these folks that do this. And my strongest suggestion for anybody out there that's listening is that first of all, don't give money ever to a point to anybody where it hurts you, and spend the time to evaluate the people that you give the money to. And when I say evaluate, this is what I really mean. Look and see if it's somebody in your community that's actually doing something that you can visibly see what they're doing, then go ahead and give it to them. But if it's somebody with a P.O. box that's spending it on jet planes, I would be hesitant to that. At bare minimum, the guy with $50 jet planes probably does not need your $50 or your $100. But the people down the street with the little church down the road, that $100 or that $50 could be a literal miracle to them.
Mm.
And that's the way that I feel about it. And I also believe that it is true that if you're faithful in that, and you're not throwing your finances that you worked for, if you're throwing them away to people that do nothing for them, then I would expect no return. But I do also believe that when you're giving out of your heart to people that are benefiting others, that the Lord recognizes that well. That's just my opinion.
No, I totally agree. I think we are stewards of the resources God has given us, and ultimately everything we have really belongs to God. And what we should do is, in my opinion, is be wise. Be wise in the way we give away. We should be giving. We should be generous. We should, if you see a need, we should try and meet needs as they arise. But on the other side, we shouldn't be stupid either and give money away to hustlers, to people who come up with a clever scheme and live incredible lifestyles most of us can only dream of, even though I think the lifestyles they live is probably not that healthy anyway. I wouldn't want to have that much money to be responsible for. But I think it's the important thing is we're stewards, aren't we? So we need to make sure we give money, to people where there is a real need, rather than feeding the prosperity of some others, and just making them even richer.
Well, it's a problem, but it's also one that I really haven't had my eyes on for the last couple of years, and I think it's something that needs to be addressed. But I mean, there's so many things that are happening in the world.
True.
Especially right now during this time in all parts of the globe, and with Israel, that there's so many fascinating topics for us to have our eyes on, and the world is full of hustlers and snakes.
True.
You'll never run out of them.
Okay.
They're all over the place, man.
Trey, we've got about 5 minutes left. Tell me a little bit about your websites. How do we get to your websites?
The God in a Nutshell. Well, just type in God in a Nutshell project into Google, and you'll come there, or it's just godinanutshell.com, and you're going to find stuff. The least of what you'll find anymore is going to be on these television passages. But if you're interested, the two that I sort of have picked on, if you will, is Benny Hinn and Mike Murdoch. And I really haven't picked on them too hard. There's a couple of videos on them, but the bulk of what there is stuff that is on ancient cultures, the alien stuff, the alien Nephilim, demon stuff.
I mean, that's a really interesting subject, and maybe we'll get back to it. Maybe the next time we can have a session here on Radio Eden. The alien stuff, really interesting. And anyway, we're going to come to this maybe some other time. You said you do some stuff on the Book of Enoch. I've started reading it recently. It's quite interesting. It's mentioned in the Bible. That's one thing.
The Book of Enoch. That's probably that's the most popular video that's up there, and that one, that book is authentic, and I believe that it is. I leave that for you guys that are listening to decide that. But if in fact it is authentic, it would be the oldest text that we have. We don't have an original copy of it. We have copy of the copy is what we've got. But that book would have actually come on the boat with Noah, because this was written by Noah's great grandfather, Enoch. Who was the seventh from Adam, the one who was not, for God took him. And the fascinating thing about that book is, yes, it is quoted by Jude. It's also referenced or alluded to by Peter. Of course, Enoch is in Genesis. In my opinion, you're holding one of the most amazing texts on the face of the planet Earth, and it's telling you about those pre-flood time periods.
Yeah. Okay.
It's fascinating.
that should be really fascinating. We're going to talk about it next time. You also do some stuff on evolution and creationism. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the theory of everything is really the pride and joy video that's up now, and the full video is 3 hours long. It's free, by the way. I mean, you can get a DVD of it. It's higher quality, but it is it's free, and it takes you through everything from quantum physics to consciousness and it's a real easy journey. This isn't complicated stuff. It's broken down where it just flows like a journey through all of these topics. But yes, it does. It does probably kill evolution pretty well. Evolution kills itself.
Yeah, true.
We're living in an age where we understand genetics pretty well, and so if all of the life forms here on this planet are comprised of programming code, you need a programmer. I mean, it's just random accidents do not produce precision coding, and that only gets worse when you delve into topics like consciousness and the quantum physics, the fabric of reality. So this place, in all of the sciences, when you're looking at the fringe areas of the sciences, the places where reality really becomes a blurry line, like in consciousness and the quantum physics, it's very easy for one to arrive at the conclusion that we are in a place that is the product of something a lot larger. God, it requires a creator. Not at some distant point way back in time. I'm talking about minute by minute. Because reality is, it's ongoing. It's sustained.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sustainer for that.
Okay, it sounds fascinating. It's another subject. I'm looking forward to have a session with you and to talk about evolution and a little bit about sort of creationism as well, and to see how God has put everything together. Okay, Trey, we've got about 3 minutes left. I want to thank you, first of all, for taking the time out to talk to us here at Radio Eden. A little bit, just before we leave, you've written the book Thieves. Is this in godinanutshell.com on the same website? Can we get there to the book, or how do we get hold of it?
You can get a copy. Yeah, you can get a copy of the book at godinanutshell.com, or you can get it on Amazon. I've got it as the ebook there as well, paperback. Anywhere books are sold, really.
Oh, okay.
God in a Nutshell would be the official site for it, or just type Thieves by Trey Smith into Google, and you'll come up with it.
Yeah, okay. The audio, I have to explain the interviews via phone line, so the audio is not that good from your end, unfortunately. Just to repeat this, it's Thieves. It's Trey Smith. Trey is spelled Trey. That's correct, yeah?
Yes, that's correct.
Trey Smith. And I would imagine if you Google it, it'll come up straight away. So the book Thieves, and then Trey Smith. And the other one is God in a Nutshell. So it's GODIN, Nutshell, NUTSHELL. Yeah. And if you Google it, I would imagine it comes up straight away. So there are really some interesting videos as well to watch. We did broadcast just at the end of last year the video, just the audio from the video about the Mayan calendar. Do you remember that one?
Oh yeah, the Mayan calendar one. Yes, I do.
Anyway, the proof is that the Mayan calendar didn't work. We are still here. Yeah, this is 2013.
Yeah, the Mayan calendar did not turn out to end the world or have enlightenment. So and I felt bad. I did for the New Age folks, because they had really pumped up the Mayan calendar so much, and they all looked so disappointed when nothing happened. They were very apologetic about that. But I was not terribly surprised. Nothing happened on the
Okay.
on the clip.
Trey, I'm looking forward to lots more talks here on Radio Eden. So I want to thank you for being here, and talk to you soon again, maybe next week or so, if you can, if you've got time.
Oh, that sounds wonderful, man. I would love it. It'd be an honor to do it.
Okay.